As well, different to most webinars, I've got a bit of a special guest, which is Dave Everburns. He's going to do a bit of an introduction and just introduce himself and address you guys quickly now. So I'll pass you over to Dave.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everybody for joining. As Alex got to share there, there's a lot of familiar faces that we know that have joined today. So thank you so much for taking some time out of the day to come on to the webinar and listen to Alex's presentation. As Alex said, my name is Dave Everburns. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Arcans for Australia and New Zealand. We are Bluebeam's largest platinum partner. At Arcans, we strive to uncover and support and maximise Bluebeam's workflow and efficiencies for a lot of our clients. And hopefully today's presentation will start unravelling some great new tips and tricks for yourselves. With Bluebeam, we always look at it, the more data that you can input into Bluebeam as a piece of software, the more you can get out of it when it comes to your workflow efficiencies and your collaboration. And again, as I said, hopefully Alex really will push that out today. Throughout today's presentation, there is the Q&A button inside of the presentation that you can click on and provide any questions you would like to be answered at the end of the presentation. Alex will, at the end of each topic, probably give you a bit of a rundown and a feedback on that. Gives you then time as well to write the questions in at that time. So with that, I'll pass back to Alex, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy a fantastic presentation.
Cool. Hi, pros. Thanks, Dave, and thanks for that intro. I'll just move on to the next slide. There's some background information in there if you're curious to have a read, but just so you guys know who I am and who's given this little presentation to you, you've got to listen to me for 40 minutes, so it's good to put a name to it. Yeah, like Dave said, Alex, I'm actually originally from an architectural background. I used to do renovation design, residential, and a few other commercial sort of projects with a few other architects in Farnham, Queensland. And I moved into Arcans 2 years ago, and I've been solely focused on Bluebeam since. So that's just a bit about me, so you know who's going to be chatting your ear off for a while. I'll go straight into it. I don't want to waste any time. Let's get straight into the actual the content, what we're here for. Just a quick look at the agenda overall to summarize. 3 parts. The first bit is with a heavy focus on the tool chests themselves. For both design and how to actually make these tools quickly. So I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with the tool chests already, but we're going to look at how to make them, how to increase the speed with making them, how to use them, and then designing with them, etc. So a bit on that. And the second bit is with the heavy focus on editing the PDF content itself. There's a few tips for and tricky ways to actually change the PDF, draw over it, use existing documents to kind of create new sketches and stuff. So some interesting stuff that works for everyone and for every industry. Then same on that same topic, there's applying changes to all the pages. This can help a bit of those admin staff as well out there. This is a bit of a broad one. Creating templates and stuff's a handy thing we can do, but you can also automatically apply changes to every page in a document, and you can actually have certain fields that will auto-generate on the same page. So pretty interesting. And the last one, a bit ambitious if we get to it, is making replacements in a PDF and actually being able to report on changes that have been made. So a lot of the times you update a drawing, you get revision 1 compared to the original. We all know, like in Bluebeam, you can do the comparisons, but there's actually a way to use that comparison tool to create a report of the changes that can be pretty helpful to provide that if you are the one updating the drawing, or you can create your own report to share with everyone else based on other people's changes. So yeah, that's a quick intro, but from there we go straight into topic 1. So like I said, with these tool chests, we'll just start with a bit of an intro for anyone who may not be aware what the tool chests are and what we're going to do with them. Into the program now. Boom, there she is. This is just a quick look at sort of the end goal. This is with everything on the page. You can see there's in red quite detailed markups and drawings for a floor plan. There's also just comments, you know, markups, changes, that sort of stuff. And, you know, north points, that sort of stuff. So creating some of those tools and creating them quickly, that's the residential side, but that's also the same can apply to HVAC, electrical, and a lot of other ways. So we'll touch on a few of those, including some of this stuff later and how we can do these different types of diagrams in Bluebeam. Cool. So, you know, despite The first example being Resi, just because I'm familiar with it. The same principles apply to anything. So if you're making a tool for, civil engineering, it's the same process for a bed or something else, but I'll sort of show you just how that works. To begin with the tool chest, that's just this panel on this side over here on your left, the little tool chest. And then each of these things within here, you can drop them down. These are all your tools. I've got quite a few in there. You can see it's a long list. But I'd like to touch on, there's actually a brand new feature with the latest updated Bluebeam we haven't seen yet. So there's actually a search bar at the top now. So it's good to know that this is actually here. The reason being is because if you've got tons and tons of tools in here, it could be really annoying to find the ones you actually need in a pinch. So you can search for the ones you specifically are after. So I can even by beam size, so 45, and I'm getting something that's at the 45 size. I can search for 100. There we go. Get a column at 100, depending on what you have saved. It's a good time talking about the searching and that sort of stuff to discuss how and what's actually going on in the background. With your tool chests, you can click into this detailed mode with the cogwheel for each tool. Go to detail. That's not a good example. Down here is a good one. So you can swap between that symbolic view, which is just a broad overview, to higher detail. And it's actually got that subject on the side. So when you double click on a tool that you have in a tool chest, you can edit that and put in whatever you want. This is what's being searched for. So if you label all your tools with good subject names, you can make them really easy to find that way. The same thing with the subject as well. When you place a tool on the page, they appear in that markups list. So that markups list at the bottom of the document tracks all your markups in the project. If we select the tool we've just placed, you can see that subject name is also in there. So that way, all of the data you're putting onto your document, when you have a good tool chest, it's saving all that information. You can filter and sort by that sort of stuff. Just a bit of awareness with the tool chest and good things to know about it there to begin with. So how to make these and how to use them as well. There's two main ways to make them that I like to discuss. The first one is like the quick way. This is the way you want if you're just using it for representative stuff. So we'll go to the other drawing for this as well, because this can apply to pretty much anything. A good way to do this is off of a legend. So I'm just going to use the switchboard legend to actually create a tool chest from this to then use over here in editing my drawing a little bit on this side. Quick and easy way. So we're going to do this for a few other things as well, but within this legend, we're just going to create tools off of these symbols straight away. Super simple, edit and then snapshot. You just want to click and drag around each symbol you're making, Control C, Control V. G, shortcut, click and drag, Control C, Control V. So it's the same thing I'm doing, just grabbing edit and snapshot. You can see the shortcut names there. I'm just using that to make it quicker. If it works most of the time. So there we go, click G, Control C, Control V, click G, circle it, Control C, Control V, rinse and repeat. So you can see it's pretty quick to grab them off the page as they are. And you can do this for each one of these symbols that we're going to use. And you can do this to any legend. This is obviously going to work for more than electrical. So now that we have the symbols, you can see we can just drag them around and actually use them if we wanted to already. But we're going to add them to the tool chest so we have access to them later. The first thing we need to do is make a new tool chest for this content to go in. So it's just at the top of your tool chest panel. You click manage tool chests, tool sets, similar. I don't know, I get confused all the time. We'll click add and create a new tool chest. This is going to be our switchboard symbols, switchboard legend, something. It's based off of that one there. Click OK. It'll ask you to save it somewhere on your computer. I'm going to do the dodgy like I always do and put it on my desktop. Bad practice. If you're actually going to keep these tools and use them, put them somewhere safe, save them somewhere where you're not going to lose them. Yeah, practice what I say, not what I do in this case. Then at the bottom, so if you scroll through your tool chests, it'll always appear at the bottom now. Quick fact, we can reorder them if there's ones that you're using more often than others. Under manage tool sets, you can scroll down to the bottom to the switchboard one and click on this arrow to bump it to the top of our list. So maybe this is one we're using all the time. We can leave it up there. Another thing we can do is modify and click on this button to show in all profiles. We click OK because that's a tool we want to use all the time. That'll now save it. When you change your Bluebeam profile to a different profile, it changes the interface, it changes your tools. But now that we've actually changed that symbol, it'll appear here. That tool chest is now always going to be visible regardless of what profile we're using. Anyway, back to the original. No need to be playing with profiles, fiddling with them. Go to our switchboard symbols. You can see it's empty. We haven't added anything to it yet. So that's why we did what we did before. We can very quickly now drag holding shift and it'll select all of them at once. Right click on any one of them, add to tool chest, and then switchboard symbols. Click yes, it'll add a lock. It just means that it's being saved. And you can see our new tool chest has all these symbols in them available, ready to go. When we click detailed view, and this is what I was hinting at earlier, that subject name is just snapshot for all of them. So we would want to actually include the correct information so we know what we're looking at. We can actually search for it as well. So this one is the light switch. The second one is the fuse. That one, actually, I've got them mixed up. Sorry. That one's the light switch. And then the fuse. Cool. I'm not going to name them all. We all know how to do that. Double click, type in with your keyboard. No need to do all of them. But once they are placed, you can then use these tools whenever you want. So if we need to add another line to this diagram or edit it, we can click on a tool, place it in the drawing, click on another tool. We can start doing whatever crazy circuitry we want to create here. I don't know if that makes sense. If there's any electrical people in the chat or in the webinar today, my apologies for butchering your work. But just to give you an idea of how it works, hey, you can place the symbols in actual logical order when you get to it. And if you need to connect just straight lines, like I'm doing now, we've got just the simple line tool, the circles and stuff that we can use to finish the rest of it off. If there's any simple line work that goes into it. And just connect that in there. So to change it all, you can click on all of them, holding shift to select each markup. We can then change them all to black and it actually blends in now pretty well. And it looks like it's part of the drawing. The next thing we can do as well, if you do want to use these lines more frequently, you can actually add the line itself to the tool chest, just so it's quicker to access. We'll do add to tool chest and switchboard symbols. At the bottom, you can see the line will now appear. And this is a good time to touch on what's it called? Detailed versus what's it called? No. Hang on. I think it's drawing mode versus properties mode. That's what I'm after. If I click on this tool now and drag it over, you can see it places the line identical to what was there. We can also use it as a tool. So you can double click on it on the image and it'll change it. And now you can see my cursor is actually in a tool sort of mode and it'll draw the line rather than placing it identically. So if we go back and double click, you can see it's going to place the straight line exactly as we got it. Yeah, so this works for both other cases as well. So the architect review tool chest, you can see this is a tool chest intended to be used as a tool to place markups, but double clicking on it, it'll go back to that default exact how it was made originally sort of mode. Cool. The same process, if we wanted to repeat it again, works for anything. You can go to these RCP legends, G, click and drag over one, copy paste, G, click and drag, copy paste. Oops, clicked it. G, click and drag, copy paste. There. And then just grab them, add them to the tool chest. We'll just use the same one, even though it's not a switchboard anymore. But now it's sort of there, ready to go if we ever want to use it again. Now, another thing with these tools, placing them in black obviously looks like it's part of the PDF. Something we can do to snapshots specifically, instead of markups, we can actually change the color with a color processing. So because it is a snapshot of the PDF, it's copying the whole thing. It's sort of like an image, but we can select one of these tools in the tool chest as it is, and then click on this tool at the top, color processing. So if we want these tools to look like markups, they should probably be red or a different color so they stand out. At the top, you have the process. We're just going to modify the colors. That's by default. The source color, you're just going to choose black or whatever color the snapshot is mostly. You can do multiple at once. So if there's shades of gray in there, you can convert those as well. But we'll convert them all to red and it'll change the entire markup to red now. and that's in the tool chest as it is. So it's not just once off. Every time we use that tool now, it's actually going to be read like a markup instead of black, like it's part of the drawing. So you can use it either way. If you want to place one of these on the drawing somewhere, there needs to be one in this room, for example. You can leave it like that, or again, the same process, change that to red. And now we can easily see that it's a markup instead of part of the drawing. But if you're doing the dodgy and you want to get a drawing out quick to somebody, leave it black and you can just send that out, good to go. So those are a lot of those quick initial points with the tool chests and making them. And that's the fastest way to make a tool chest. If you have an existing legend, you have existing stuff, you can do it, do it off of the legend and copy it. So a question in the chat that I'll actually answer now, just because it's easier, is how to set the tool chest's scale. That's a good one and definitely an important one for drawing and representing stuff on your pages. So particularly when you're doing details or something like this detail, we can use, like I brought up before, a column and place that in the drawing, and it'll place it to scale if the tool chest is scaled. So to start this from the beginning, because this is one that's pre-made, ready to go, it's got the scale set. I'll just reproduce this example in a new tool chest. So from the beginning, it's just a matter of drawing this sort of the markup you want. So if I'm creating this for the first time, creating these scaled tools, it's partially about how you create them to begin with. So if you're just snapshotting something like a timber member, we want to use this, for example, we can do so with snapshot and just grab a look at this one. Control-C, Control-V. So we've got basically a timber stud that we want to be to an exact size. Snapshotting it off the page, we'll snapshot it at the scale it came in originally, no problems, right? To add this to a tool chest, we'll add it to the same one. We'll use the one we've already made. So add to tool chest and then switchboard symbols. So it'll appear in the bottom. We can place it in the drawing. To set the scale of this tool chest for the first time is to click on this cogwheel and there's a set scale button. Then you can actually just choose a preset, but as always with Bluebeam, calibrating is going to give you more accuracy. So to calibrate, we just go to custom and then calibrate over the side here and choose 2 points of a known dimension. For this is 2 points of the tool. At the bottom, if your toolbar isn't there, it's under tools, toolbar, status bar. But the status bar at the bottom, you've got these two buttons. We want those turned on. So snap to markup, snap to content. That just means that when I do this calibration, you can see the box appearing on my cursor. It's going to snap to that tool. And I also want to hold shift. You can see if I'm not holding it, it's just a free line. If I hold shift, it restricts me to 45-degree angles and straight lines. So then I can hold shift and click on the opposite end. And it gives me the measurement of what's actually within the drawing itself. On the right-hand side is what it's truly supposed to be. So for us in millimeters, I'm guessing it's probably a 45 mil wide piece of timber. We can calibrate it to whatever it's supposed to be. Let's say it's supposed to be 50 mils. And well, maybe not. I don't know. It's probably a bit short, whatever. 60 stud for a wall and apply that scale. So when I place that tool now for the second time from the same location, you can see that blue indicates that it is scaled. You can click on that tool, drag it over, and it's massively shrunk because of the scale of the page. There could have been something done wrong there, but the first thing, we'll just have to reassess what we've done here. On the drawing itself, it might be a matter of this being 1 to 20, because you can see we're on 1 to 100. So that's actually correct in a sense. It's placing it at 1 to 100 when it's on a 1 to 20 drawing. So you can either change the scale of the drawing as a whole, or as you can see, we've got two different scales on the same page. So I'll prefer to go to my measurements panel and create a viewport, which is going to allow me to have a separate scale on the same page. Sorry, someone's got their hand raised. If you can just type in the chat if there's any points you want to get after before I go too fast, because I tend to do that. But yeah, feel free to just type it in. Let me know what the go is, and I'll address it for you. Sorry, I am just doing that off instinct without talking about it. So the viewport, sorry, you click on the plus symbol, select a region, click and drag over the drawing, and then a custom scale. You can calibrate it as well, but to use this time, instead of calibrating, we use the normal scales, 1 to 20. Precision 1 for millimeters, and then apply that. This viewport will now appear on the drawing. It's got a different scale on this page. Sweet, so when I do that again and place that tool on, you can see it's actually much bigger, or it's accurate to 60 millimeters, what 60 millimeters should look like on this drawing. It must be a 120 stud wall, which is why it doesn't fit all the way across. You can see as well with the viewport, when you place a scaled tool, it shrinks and increases depending on which region you're putting in. So we've got those two separate scales on the same page. Cool. So if if that hasn't been answered in any way, if there's any other questions in the scaling aspect, just please drop them in. Let me know what the go is. If there's any confusion, there's a bit of a quick example, but definitely a good question. So I wanted to cover it. Sweet. Just back to what we were on before, which is the tool chests. So now, like we discussed with making them, you can make them with the snapshotting method off of an existing legend. You can also make them by creating them and grouping existing markups. So what does this look like and what's the difference? So the difference is when you place a snapshot markup, like we'll stick on this page for now. When you place a snapshotted markup like this one and compare what you can do to it to a markup, you can fill it in with a color. So you can fill it in with blue or any other color depending on the region it was drawn in, but it is limited in the sense that we can't actually edit the line colors. You can see changing that doesn't do anything. Changing the line to a dashed line doesn't do anything because it's a screenshot, obviously. So the other way to make tools is to actually draw them. So you can draw them with just any rectangle tool, mimic sort of what we've created here, draw some lines in, drag that back so it's correct, and we can just draw it. Shift click will let you select all of them. So shift click and drag, we can select everything in that area. Right click on that group we've made and group them to create one markup. So now instead of 3 lines in a box, it's one individual markup. So when you compare these two methods, this is quicker, but this, especially if it's detailed, like that's just 3 lines. If you're creating something like a staircase or something more detailed, there's obviously going to be a lot more lines and stuff you have to draw. But with this example, you can change the line types. The scale is probably a bit too small for it to be noticeable, but you can, there you go, you can change to different line types and dashes. You can increase the line thickness and width, etc. You can also change the line color. You can, do way more stuff to that. You can even fill in like a hatch pattern behind that, but it's too small of a tool to matter for that example. So you can see that it makes it a bit more useful in that you can do more things to it. So those are the main differences. If you just go back to how it was with the straight lines, you can add this to your tool chest as well. And there you go, you've got the 2 schools of thought. So the one we've made versus the one we screenshotted here, side by side, works the same way, but one of them has more options available. So that just covers really quickly how to actually create them and how to use them. I'm going to go now into a few more tips around the tool chests themselves and other ways you can use them. Can you snapshot in a different shape other than a rectangle and square? Yes, yeah, you can. So good question, because sometimes, stuff might have other bits of drawing around it. It makes it hard to snapshot. We find another legend over here. Well, not a perfect example, but if we want to create, the ceiling height marker as a tool, for example, G for the snapshot tool. If you turn the snapping off, we use them for the scaling, but for this, it's better freehand. You can then click just individually and it'll start the line to create the region. So you can just place individual left clicks. That'll draw around the markup we want. Then you can Control-C, Control-V to copy that. So yeah, that's really good for if you're grabbing something, maybe you don't have a perfect legend example, and there's other stuff around it that you don't want to include in your snapshot. Hard to find a good example, but sort of as a demonstration of the concept, if you don't want that whole line, you can start here and then just keep clicking all the way around and it'll exclude that line on the left. So you can get pretty detailed snapshots from there. Another thing you can do, so if you are wanting to grab this, for example, you've got nowhere else without that line on it, you can click and drag and copy and paste it, drag it to somewhere empty on the drawing, and then you can right click on the markup and flatten it, which makes it part of the PDF again, which means we can snapshot it again. But the reason we sort of do that is because we can draw over it or make some edits. If you want to get rid of this line, you may want to draw a line over it to cover most of what you're trying to cover up. And then you can change your markup that you're using to cover up the color white, and it'll get rid of some of that stuff you don't want. And then you can copy paste it and sort of see what I mean. You can create basically what you want out of it. You grab the two white markups and flatten them into the drawing, and you can now screenshot this without those lines next to it. So it's a cool way to fix it. If you've got no good options to snapshot from, you can sort of repair them using your normal markup tools and editing them to look better. Sweet. Yeah, good questions. Thanks very much. Right. So as I was saying, sorry, what was I saying? I think I was getting on to markup tools. Yeah, okay, that's it. So extra tips and tricks for this. That's right. So one example, I'm going to use this as a demo of concept first, as a fire escape plan tool chest I've made in the past. You can place the UR here dot the primary route with the line type and create this sort of drawing very quickly. But the main thing I'm getting at with this is after you've done your drawing, there's obviously PDF content behind all this stuff that might be hard to see, especially if you want a legend somewhere in the drawing. Maybe you want it close, and it might cover part of the drawing because it has to. Something that we've added in this tool chest is actually the layers are automatically assigned. So if I right click on this tool chest or any of the tools in this tool chest, it has a layer associated with it. So this one is on the layer fire plan, and fire plane. So when I go to my layers panel on the left-hand side, which is the symbol, it's like two pieces of paper on top of each other. That fire plan layer is on. I can use the eyeball to turn these symbols off and on. So if you need a draw on top of other detailed drawings like this, it can get crowded very quickly, and you may be tempted to create a new page or duplicate the page to do more drawings onto it. But you can see with this sort of layering, it means you can go to your layer panel quickly and just turn certain things off and on, which just makes it a lot more user-friendly. You don't have to have multiple pages. You're keeping your actual pages within your document to a minimum and saving file size by doing that as well. So a few benefits there. How to do that? So the tool chest we have example, you can just right click on any one of them, click on the layer there, and then type in the layer you want it to go on. Make sure they are the same. If this is lowercase p, even slightly different, when I place it, it'll make a new layer called fire plan lowercase p. So they have to be identical. But you just have to do that to every tool. So controlling line weights, a question there in the chat as well. So when you do draw, just basic lines, or often it's the issue when you want to draw a more detailed tool. So if you're trying to draw something like this and you want to change that line weight, I don't think, I've never heard of any shortcut for it, unfortunately. I can, all the shortcuts that we do have in the program, you can find. So under help and keyboard shortcuts guide, it'll open a PDF with all the possible shortcuts. And we can use a bit of a Bluebeam trick here just for the sake of this example. Control F to search through this document if there's anything related to line weight. But it's got no results, so I don't think there is one, unfortunately. There are ways to make it a bit quicker though. So if the shortcut doesn't exist and it's something you're doing very often, it's something that you can kind of just save to the end in a way and do to everything. So if you've just been drawing, line work and you need to change it at the end, you can lift up your markups list and filter by the date to get all the most recent markups you've drawn. And then you can just click shift click to select all of them at once, and then change the line weights all at once. So you can do them in groups to make it easier. So you're not changing the line weight every time you place a tool. It'll reduce that workload if you do it in big groups. And if you are using one more commonly than others, if you reduce that line weight to 0.50 that you wanted at, you can right click on that tool and click set as default. So that way, when you click on the tool again and use it, it's now defaulted to 0.50. So that way you can reduce that workload if you're using a common line weight all the time. So sorry, there's no shortcut for it that I know of. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's the easiest way that you can keep that workload to a minimum. Sweet. So that covers the tool chest, the layers, that sort of stuff to support that. The last thing I do want to talk about is another new feature with Bluebeam, which is more on your document review side of things. So we've discussed a lot the tool chests themselves. So the other side of this is actually sharing tool chests and assigning them sort of statuses. So this right-hand side, on this page, for example, if you're using your markups to place reviews, the statuses that we're all familiar with, and I'm just going to touch on this new aspect of it for now, but the statuses have different options in them. So you can click on manage status here in your markups list. You can create one of your own, but again, just to show the new feature of this, you can create any one. The one that comes with Bluebeam by standard is the review tool. You turn the others off, we want to use this one. When you do go to set a status, you right click on the markup, click on set status at the bottom, and you can select one. The new feature is the shortcut. So Shift+1 is the shortcut for setting the accepted status. It makes it a lot quicker. If I'm the person that's going to review this drawing, instead of clicking on every markup, right click, set status, we've got that shortcut there to accept it. So you can click Shift2, 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 and you can see all the markups have now been rejected. I can go through and Shift3, 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 and then they all update now to cancelled. If I want to Shift4, they can go to completed. So it makes it quick as to do those reviews. Another tool for this, you can filter the markups list. So if you click filter list and go to your statuses and filter by completed, it'll show all the markups that are completed. I can then go through and review these ones and it'll grey them out as I change the status. So it's a cool way to use that tool a bit more effectively, but just wanted to touch on that for those of you that know statuses already. There is a new shortcut within there. It's very handy. Now, if you change the properties of the tools as default, can default to low line weight. Yeah, so the properties within those tools, if you change that for the ones on this markups list, or on your toolbar, for any of these tools like the rectangle or the polygon, you can click and drag and place a polygon. If you lower the line weight, it lowers it to 0.50. You can set that as the default. So yeah, you can lower it a bit. And then, yeah, right click, set as default. Now, every time I place that tool, it's going to place it at 0.50. So you can default it to a lower line weight. Bringing up the markups list. Sorry if for those newer users, apologies. The markups list, if it's closed, it's just at the bottom. There's either that button on the left-hand side. You can pop it up, or you can click and drag that up from the bottom there to raise it. Now just move on to the next topic and cover that one off. So editing the PDF content. We've touched on this a little bit already. So there's just a few extra things I want to touch on. We mentioned already, and I kind of got ahead of myself with that side of it, copy pasting parts of the drawing and then editing it somewhere else. Some other things we can that are good to know is we have the ability to edit just the text in one of these examples. So I've got this example in the past here. In the general legend, any text in the drawing that needs to change, we can actually change it very quickly. So edit at the top left, PDF content, and edit text is another option. So we've got the cut and erase for the content itself, but if we need to change the text, we can do so. If this is supposed to be something else, this maybe, lunch desk, lunch table, whatever, semantics, but the point being you can actually edit the text within a drawing. So if there's a problem, you don't want to have to go open up your Revit model just to change a few words. you can just go through and change that with Bluebeam in the PDF itself. So it's handy to know it's there, lets you make quick changes. The other side of this is erasing. So if there's stuff that needs to go, you can just erase that content from the PDF itself, reduce that side of it and get real nice and close. As similar to the question before, you can keep clicking multiple and do any specific sort of shape. So if you need to erase something a bit more tiny, you can click just individual clicks, and then you can be sure you're only getting rid of what you're supposed to. So those are just good to know, because you can obviously save yourself a bit of hassle loading up your original drafting program and fixing small mistakes with the spelling and other stuff in there. And again, the same for cut. This is similar to snapshot, but it'll just remove it and place it back on. So if you want to move something on the page, it's just slightly askew. You can grab this whole legend, for example, it'll cut it out. You can paste it back on, and it's now a markup that you can realign. You can move them across from each other, adjust it that way. So you can use that arrow key on the keyboard to move it minute amounts, but it lets you fix those sort of small things. Cool, so that's editing the content pretty quickly. The next one I just want to touch on similarly is actually adding something to every page at once. So typically with stamps and signatures and stuff, people, you place your preliminary stamp, got to go through the whole drawing and place the same one, approved on each box in each area. A better way we can do this as well, rather than placing it multiple times, if you place it on one page once, you can just find it, you can go through, see it's all blank on every other page at the moment, line it up exactly where you want it to be. You right click on that stamp or that markup, and you can apply to all pages. So 1 through 8, you can click apply, and it'll place it on every page now, and it saves you just that time going through a large document. So it's done it for every page. This can be done for anything, not just stamps. So if it's a matter of putting a signature on, use my pen tool and sign that off. A little bit dodgy, but sign that off. You can apply that to all pages as well. You can see that's going to be there on every page. Just another quick one. You can do that multiple times. Any markup, anything. The next one as well is a bit more advanced, but this is something for actual content like the proposed building, some of the text within the page. So the date or the project number, if any of these things have to change, you don't want to be going through edit text every single page. The two ways we can fix this, you can either create a template and just place your text box over the top of it and do 0, 2. You then just need to shrink it a small little go, fill that with white so it covers what's behind it, and you can apply that to every page like we did a second ago. But the more interesting workflow that lasts a bit longer, if you're going to be in one PDF a lot, you can actually shift it around a little bit with your form field. So this is just a more advanced way to do it. This means that we can use these fields and it'll update on every page at once. So for the example, I'm going to go to the first page and just use the PDF tool to erase that. I'm going to erase the project number. Instead, I'm going to add a form field text box from the form fields panel. Click and drag that text box over the project number area and release. So that creates one entry here within the forms field area. What we want to do is click on this and actually rename it to project number. Exactly, and hit enter, so it's now saved. The reason we do this, when we go to the next page and do the same thing and erase that content, we can then create another form fields box in the same location, and we want to give it the same name, project number. The reason we do that is once it has the exact same name as another text box, anything you enter into one will be entered into the other. So if we type in number 02 and go to the next page, you can see it actually fills that in as well. And if you change this to N03, it'll appear on that page as well. Keeps it consistent, updates the whole set of drawing at once. It's a lot more initial setup, as you can see, to create all the text boxes. So you have to create that project number text box on every page. But if you create it on one and then you duplicate it, it'll create it for that page as well. When you go to the form fields, it changes it to project number. You just have to remove the number 1 on the end, and that whole page will be ready to go. So it is quick to add, but it's good to know it's there. If you've got PDFs, you're changing stuff all the time, create a good template from the very beginning. And again, how do you do a quick template? You can just do it from the one you're using right now, but edit PDF content. If you just erase everything on this page, for example, you can then use this as a template. Just get rid of everything down here. Get rid of the markups on it. This is now a blank sheet you can use. Just save this file somewhere and you can use that whenever you need it. Cool. Running on to the end of the allotted time. I covered all the main ones. I did say it was a bit ambitious when I was talking about getting to this topic, which is that visual search, but I think I can do it very quickly. If it goes over your heads, you can watch the recording, hopefully, because it's going to be a lot of steps at once, but I'll show it very quickly because I promised to do it. So, hey, I can't leave you hanging. So this topic, what we're just going to do is actually similar to what we were talking about before, just editing your PDF, making changes. But for something a bit more advanced, for example, EL1 and EL here. So the use case, the example we're working with while we're doing this, the EL symbol is supposed to be EL1 on this drawing, and the drawing has to go out today. It's going to be a big drama to go through into the Revit project and change the families around and make the changes. It just needs to get on site. So how can we fix it the fastest way? The first thing is just to create a tool. So we're going to create a count tool specifically to place on top of each one of these. So we want EL1, and we want to place it on top of EL here. Same thing we did before, everyone. So copy with G, that shortcut, copy, paste that markup that's on the page, add this markup to a tool chest. So I'm going to put it in my tools, just go to the very top. So you can select that markup there, and now you can place it. You can easily go through and place this where it's supposed to go now. You may need to fill it in with a color so it stands out. It's going to place it on top of other things. You can then just place this over every symbol, but doing it manually like this, you might miss some. So the cool tip we do have for this is to create a count tool. So you right click on the markup and click create count. It duplicates the tool and now it's a count measurement. This looks like it's the exact same thing. Alex, what are you doing? At the moment it's just counting, which isn't what we wanted to use it for. We want to use it for the visual search function, which actually lets us place a count tool on everything that it finds. So we're kind of breaking Bluebeam to do what we want it to do here. On the search panel on the left, you can click on the image one at the top for visual, and then click around one of these tools. So we want to search for everywhere that EL appears. So we want to get a rectangle, click and drag over that, and then search. The bottom, we have some options first. If we want to change anything, we want to search maybe for fine detail. And in the top here, we can change specifically where we're searching. I just want to do the current page. You can do this for an entire PDF on multiple pages, which makes it a very handy tool. It will speed this up. So you'll just click search now. It'll search this whole page for anywhere that appears, and you can see them all at the bottom in a big list. If you click this arrow here, select all, it will select everything. You can then go through, scroll through your list. If there's anything that is a false positive that shouldn't be there, you can untick it and get rid of it. Let's say that, but that's correct. So we'll leave it on. From there, we can then actually go to the top of our list, scroll up here again. There's a lightning bolt symbol. Click on that lightning bolt and apply count measurement to checked. So this tool is meant to count how many of something is in a drawing, which is great. We're breaking it to actually place that symbol that we created on top of everything else. So you can see everywhere that there is EL, it's placed EL1 on top instead. So you got EL1, 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 and if you click delete, you can see everywhere that we were just looking, it was EL originally. If we go back and Control Z and undo that, you can see some of them have been missed. So some of these say EL, they were not replaced. It's just a matter of playing with the sensitivity. If we crank that and run that again, it'll probably pick up way more this time. So yeah, pretty quick. You can click on that list there and run the same thing and apply that count again. And it's picked up a few extras, it's still missed a couple. So unfortunately not perfect for this example. This symbol is really weird and irregular. You can see it's kind of strange how it's generated at a Revit. So yeah, not perfect every time, but if it was something simpler like this FL, that would probably work way better. I like to do the hard examples because I'm not trying to pull wool over your eyes for how good this tool is. Still 10 times faster than doing it manually, so very, very handy tip. Cool. The reason I do love showing that example is just because it's kind of proof of how dynamic Bluebeam is. It's a very simple tool, but you can use it for what you actually are after, breaking it a bit into what you want it to do. Cool. So that then hits us onto the end of what I was talking about, but I'll take a lot of questions now for anything else that's going to come through. Anyone that anything that you want me to do again, because it is quite quick. It's a webinar. Hopefully, the recording will be available. Sorry, that was a question from earlier as well. The recording will go on YouTube, so you can go through and watch any of these steps again if you need to. Main thing really is to get that information out there, let you know those tools and those options are available. All right, let's go through some of these questions. That is the wrong page. Sorry, I should go to my actual slide, but go back into Bluebeam for the questions. So from the ones I haven't covered, when editing and deleting text, you found that other text on the page also shifts. Okay, yes. So that is something that can happen when there's sort of paragraphing and stuff within the page. So under edit and PDF content and edit text again, if we sort of delete this whole thing here, you may find if you keep backspacing it, jump up to a random spot. Trying to make it happen. There you go. So you can see in this case that 2D probably shouldn't be moving. So yeah, the tool itself isn't 100% perfect, but we can break it to do what we need it to do. A tip for making this work more consistently and better for you, you'll find sometimes if you start deleting text from the very end of the line first, it's more prone to having issues. Whereas if you start from the middle and use delete and then fill outwards, it can be slightly more friendly with stuff and it won't break as easily. But when it does move text around, like this text here, we'll start in the middle and do double data. You can just artificially fix it with space bars to fill the space that you're replacing. If it isn't working, you can manually change it. So if that 2D is giving us an issue, you can use the cut tool to change it from sort of text to a floating markup. And now when you edit the text, it won't move that 2D around as well. It'll just change what you want to change. So there's a couple of ways there to break it and edit it, so it's not going to give you as much grief. Other text on the page also shifts. Yep. So next question is, how do we set the tool chest to link to the tool chest files on a server so that when they update our tool chest automatically, the tool chest needs to be re-imported every time? Okay, gotcha. So yeah, saving tool chests to other people in the company. There's a couple of ways you can do this. And one I was actually meant to show you is just a handy way to leave it somewhere you need it to be. So at the top right, I've got a little paper clip, so you can link and embed a file into a PDF. So if there's a specific tool chest you need people to use on a specific document, you can double click on that and click open. It'll actually load the tool chest straight away from the PDF to my Bluebeam. So at the bottom, it's loaded in my new markup tool chest, so I can use this one that I'm supposed to be using. If these certain tools attached to it, I can go through and use these ones now. So you can save them into a PDF, which is just a good one to know. How do you do that? That's at the top with tools and file attachment. So you click on that, find the tool wherever it's saved that you want to use, click open, and then hopefully it'll let you place it in the drawing. My cursor's changed. You left click somewhere, it'll put that paper clip in there. So then you can just double click on that to open it up. So shared locations and stuff though is the best way to do it. So that's with the top system under tool chests and manage tool sets. With all of these tools, importing and exporting is sort of the way to do it. You want to export all the tools you've created somewhere like a SharePoint location. When you click import to load them in for the first time, You can then just find them from your SharePoint. So for me, it's in here in Bluebeam somewhere, content, tool chests. So these are where all my tool sets are saved. If I click on this one and click open, you can see there's a slight difference between some of the information here with the pathing. So the path for this one is specifically like on my desktop, like my OneDrive desktop. Nope, sorry, phone's going off. That path is showing it where it's saved from when I made it, whereas the other paths are just .btxs, which means they're loading from somewhere specific. So if we find the one we just loaded in, which is that common door and window timber detailing tool chests, could have picked one with a shorter name, but under modify, it's the same sort of information as usual. It doesn't say anything about where it comes from, but which I was hoping for, but unfortunately, yeah, the path itself is just the toolset name, but that's coming from the SharePoint location. So if I save this tool chest now and edit it to the SharePoint, so I can do whatever I want to it in here at the bottom. Like I can delete some of these, and it's not going to ruin it for everyone. That's just loaded into my program manually. But when I log in the next time, it'll actually reload it from wherever it is within the SharePoint. So it's just a matter of finding that folder, uploading your master files in there, and setting them as uneditable. And that way people will download the tool from that one spot. And every time that tool chest is updated, it'll update that within Bluebeam itself. So yeah, it doesn't need to be re-imported every time a change is made if it's saved to a shared spot. So next question is, if you import a page with forms into an existing document, does it recognize the same field? Right, so forms that go from an existing doc, yeah, with forms to a new document, I'm sort of guessing. So like this tip we were getting at before, these form fields at the bottom. So if you have a document with form fields that you're using, if you want to move them around, duplicate them, add them to different pages, it will recognize the same field if it does have the same name. So to show this in action, we'll just create a new PDF, just a completely new blank one, so we can import one into it. If we add a form field on this document, not signatures, forms, form field, we can call this project number, same as the other one. If we add the page that we've got here in our thumbnails panel and just copy paste this page into our new PDF and go to our forms panel, you can see the page will want to bump it. So the page that we've just pasted in is page 2, and it'll naturally want to bump the text with the number 1 on it. So that's just the one thing that does happen. So it's the same within any PDF. So if you've just got the original document and you copy paste this page, the cover sheet, it will include that same problem where it's placing the new page in, but everything's got the number 1 after it. So you do just have to, if you paste the new page in, you have to just double click on them and get rid of those end numbers, and it'll start working again because they're the same. So you can see it's updated and it's N03 for all 3 of them, even though we only added that page recently. So it's just a funny thing. It wants to keep them separate. So it's not going to break it if it's not supposed to have the same text. So the benefit is if you paste a page in and they're supposed to be different, it'll keep it different. But if you want them the same, you just have to make that adjustment. Another one is, how do you set font preferences so it applies to all documents you edit? When you edit the PDF, it reads the font from whatever document you're drawing it from. So you can't set the default for what you're editing, but edit PDF content and text and edit that formal living room. You can see it's going to copy, and the properties panel will tell us it's copying whatever that font is on the drawing already. If you want to edit the text to be something different, you have to change it each time. So if you want to go to rounded, you can start typing in rounded, but it'll always copy the actual text within the page. A tip with that, sometimes when you do go to edit this, if it's a foreign text that doesn't get recognized by Bluebeam, when you edit the PDF content, edit text again, you can do Control A on your keyboard to select everything, and you can change it to a font that you do have, and it'll actually fix it all pretty consistently. So now you can edit that text. That's just something that happens a lot of the time with PDFs that are external. If the edit text is grayed out, how do you get around that? So edit text, and sometimes tools are grayed out because of permissions and stuff like that. So it might be just a certification aspect. So within Bluebeam, it's, I think, somewhere up here, a document, or where am I looking? There's somewhere that will tell me what is specifically allowed. It can also be a matter of your version or the level of licensing you do have with what tools are available. But to show first under signatures and stuff like that, sometimes it'll be a signed or certified document. Anything signed or certified will appear in the signatures panel, so you can tell if it's not allowing you to edit the PDF because of a restriction that's intentional or not. That might be the case. There is somewhere else to see that. I'm not sure. If it's a matter as well, so with some PDFs, you may need to run OCR first, optical character recognition. So you just click OK and run that. I don't need to, but it'll basically identify any text in the PDF and turn it into editable and selectable text. It might be sort of a raster that doesn't read properly at the moment. So running OCR can also help that. Creating a tool chest that counts and put it in the legend. So if you want to count stuff like we did a second ago, if you want to use it for its actual intended purpose, you just open up your tool chest. Say, for example, with these columns as well, you can right click on that tool and change it to create count. So any tool in the tool chest will just duplicate, it's added to the bottom count measurement. So anytime I place this column now, instead of being a normal tool, it is just a count tool. So when you open up your markups list with that, click and drag there, again, the symbol works too, and select that count. It's got the comments there for 3. Under markups list, you can also go to columns and manage columns to turn on the count tool. Sorry, the drop down box here for columns. We just want to put count on. Count, so it's a column that is going to give you your 100% data as well. Creating a tool chest that automatically counts. Yep, so that's that counting tool. The new revision of Bluebeam, how to remove decimal points when taking measurements. If there are decimal points that you don't want, it's a matter of the accuracy. So if we go back to the example we did that on in here, when you're creating sort of tools and placing measurements, if I place a dimension, just for an example, in here, it's got 314 millimeters. If I want more accuracy or there's decimal points, it's because on your measurements panel, your precision is set quite low. You can set the precision to 1 if you want it to show no decimals. If you set the precision lower and drag that out a bit, I think it's standard. I can't get it to do what I don't want it to do. Funny. High level. The same should work if you place between 2 measurements here. 91. Oh, sorry, because it's a viewport. Sorry. That's what's happening. If I place the measurement up here, it'll be the same. So the precision is calibrated differently for the viewport as it is for the page itself. That's why I was doing that. But you can see I've got those decimals in there. So the measurements panel and then precision here, if you change that to 1, it'll change to have no decimals anymore. So that's just how it's calculating that, or how it's doing that. Is there a way to create a legend for all the symbols used? You are a lighting designer. Use multiple symbols to represent different luminaries. Okay, gotcha. Consolidating on a table is good for the client. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got your tool chest, you can create a standard legend you can use every time as well, or you can create them very quickly, regardless. So let's call this, let's just say, oh, yeah, I want to do a good example so it doesn't look as silly. With the columns, maybe it's a good example. We've got different size columns, different types of lights works the same way. So clicking through any of these columns, placing them where they sort of should be in the project. Don't come after me for this. I know it's very weird. It's a random example. I don't have a different set of lights available, but I've just placed some columns representatively somewhere. If I zoom out now and select all of them at once, so, or even just one of each type works, but generally speaking, shift click over the area that I want to do is best. That'll grab everything that's going on this page. Just right click on that one instance in particular, or any of them, legend at the bottom, and then click create new legend. We'll place one on the side here. So that legend will come in by default with the description, which is the same as the subject name, the quantity of how many are in there. So even though it's not a count tool, it does count them. So there's 4 on this page, including the one down here. So it's counting how many size 75s there are and giving me the unit of measurement that's in there. If you want to turn columns off or on, if you've got extra content, whatever context you want to get rid of or change, you can just change that under the columns here. So at the top, when you have the legend selected, columns, edit columns, turn unit off, for example. You don't need quantities in numbers of 4, 1, and 1. That's fine. You may have like beam lengths or something. You want to put like a length column in there. You can add that, for example. But yes, you can add anything to a legend like this. Under the properties here as well, you can change some of the appearances. So the size of the text for the title, you can make it bold with an underline. And then the columns themselves, you can change the font and everything. But then the table, you can give it a bit of a color, outline color black, for example, and then the fill color light gray. Whoa, there it is. And the outline can be different types. So you can do a horizontal, or you can do a full outline grid style. And yeah, like pretty much increase the symbol size if you want to see more of the symbol, but lots and lots of options for changing how it looks as well. So that's pretty handy. Hopefully that answers it for you. With the tool chest on SharePoint, can you set it so it can't be edited? That's, sorry, not as much a Bluebeam question as it is a SharePoint question. So within SharePoint, as the owner of the file, it's just a matter of setting those permissions in there. I despise SharePoint, so just to put it out there, I don't know how to do that actually off the top of my head, sorry. But it is more of a SharePoint thing within the settings of SharePoint itself in the files. It's just I think on the website version of SharePoint, if you open the like on Google Chrome or something and go through there, you can find the folder that they're stored in and change the permissions to that folder on the website. I'm not sure exactly, sorry. Callouts from AutoCAD. If the text is locked, how do you unlock? Oh, interesting. So I'm not sure what like locked means. If the text itself, like for example, in Bluebeam, we talk about locks. Any markup you can right click and lock. Sometimes stuff that's imported from AutoCAD just does this, where it actually locks it in Bluebeam. So you can right click on it and click lock to unlock it again. If that's what's happening, imports sometimes use that feature. If it's not letting you edit the text itself within here, it can be a matter of like a janky way to fix it is definitely to cut the content, repaste it, and then flatten it. And then when you do edit text, you can edit that. So that might fix it depending on what the actual lock is. If it's, again, like if it's a certification lock, you have to either like clear the signature off or get rid of that certification. But it might just be, again, it might just be a matter of that lock within Bluebeam itself, or copying it and pasting it back on might fix it for you as well. And run through the font preferences once again. Sorry. So yeah, for preferences with fonts and stuff, if you're talking about just tools themselves, the text tool, for example, you place that and type in whatever you want. You can edit this markup we placed in preferences here, or at the top with font. just choose whatever font you want to use. And when you right click on that tool, you can set that as the default so that every time you place the text tool, that will now be the default with the Adobe font there. If you're talking more about within the PDF, so whatever the PDF was printed from will have that font in there. So if you edit the PDF content and edit the text, you can't customize what you're putting in. It's always going to copy the PDF itself. So you can just change it within there, but there's no setting of the default in terms of the PDF content itself. Instead of a count, can we set a linear measurement when using the same icon multiple times? So if you're talking about lengths like legend specifically, kind of. So with with those tools, instead of a count, can we set a linear measurement when using the same icon? Yeah, cool. So like for example, like maybe the beams is a good one where this is representing a 2-meter beam or something. One thing we can do is specify that distance in a new column. So instead of, well, it'll still have a count of how many markups there are, because each of these is its own sort of entity with a volume or with a number associated. But if a markup has an associated length, you can add that length. If you're talking about measurements specifically, if you do place a measurement tool, like a dimension, that will come up in its own column. So with the columns itself, it's got the measurement column there. If you add this to the legend, just to show that at work, it's got the length measurement and the number, which is a total amount of length. So every time I add a tool, it increases that total, which is like not perfect for what we want. Like maybe it's good if you're measuring how much wire you're using as an electrician, or you're measuring how much timber you're using in total, but it's not really ideal. You kind of want itemized. Within that, then if that is the case, it's not as easy. With the legends specifically, they're not as helpful for itemizing things like that. The markups list is good for it. It's just not going to be as visual. If you want to include, for example, like this beam, you want to associate a value with it, we can go to the markups list and do columns and manage columns on the side custom, and we can add a new column and call that the measurement of the length of the beam specifically. Add a formula or a number. Click OK and OK, and then that markup itself, you can right click on it, or sorry, go to the properties panel. Whoops, I changed the line style on accident. Go to the bottom, length of the beam, you can type in 1200, and you've got another area where you can associate that data. So that's just another way to do it, depending on what you're trying to achieve. Sorry if hopefully that answered the question. I think it was, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Instead of a count, can we set a linear measurement? Yeah, so in a way you can, pretty much like with the columns, if you associate an item with a value, you can use that value when you're exporting markups list using your markups list, but the legends themselves are only intended for totaling and quantifying and stuff, not really providing itemized lists as such. It may be possible, like with the length measurements specifically, you can break it a little bit by giving them a number. So if I place the length measurement and give it a different subject of like just the subject number 1, when I add that to the tool chest, or sorry, to the legend, it'll add it on as its own item. So you can itemize them by giving them different descriptions, but then you have to name them all one by one. So that might not be perfect. Yeah, different sort of things there, but it's worth having a look within the properties here. Everything that you can do is going to be in your properties panel, no matter what. So if there's a way to break it up into itemized things instead of quantities, it'll be in here somewhere in your columns. the display order, for example, you can change the cells themselves, but not exactly yet. There's no option to itemize or spread them out. There's a few different things you can try there at least though. So changing that subject name, and if you include more columns, it'll spread them out a bit more as well. So if you include different things instead of quantity, you can choose to include the column for length. And then if we duplicate that measurement, it's just going to give me the same. Yeah, so it's not quite doing what I want it to do. But yeah, so sorry, I don't think there is a way to itemize it in the legend, but a few different options there at least anyway. Cool, I think we've got some people left over. Thanks for sticking with me, a lot of questions. Hopefully that did answer that. And one more from Dave is export specific markups from a user. So you can export anything you want pretty much. So your markups list contains everything, and you can narrow it down to what you want. So if you want to export your markups list data, you just click on that summary button within your markups list here, and you can choose either Excel, XML, or PDF. So a PDF summary to show that one, they all work the same way essentially. So I'll just show one, but you can then create this export, and these are all your different options for filtering it out. So the columns are the data that we're including. So all the stuff, all the column names at the top of the markups list that we want to export. The filter and sort's what we want for filtering out. If it's a specific user we're after, we can go to the author. It's just me, so there's no option for that. But another example is under subject. You can turn everything off and scroll through and find specific stuff that you want. So maybe you just want to export of the beams. So you can select all your beams there, and we'll just export that data. So it just creates a little summary of all the beams in the project now on the PDF for us. So you can filter by anything. If there's more than one author, you can filter by that, but it's just me. Yeah. How do you user permissions? Users with right permissions to the file can lock the tool chests. Yeah, so that's again sort of partially for where it's saved with the tool chests themselves. Under manage tool sets, and if you select one and you click modify, it's just there's no options for any of that, sorry, but let me think about this for a sec. With the tool chest and setting the permissions. So yeah, if you do want to share it and then reduce who can edit it, who can do what to it, yeah, again, I think it's a SharePoint thing. So users with right permissions can lock the tool chest. So yeah, that's correct, and it reads that from where it's coming from. So with the lock itself, this is that sort of symbol, and this is what it's talking about. So if I've created this new tool chest and exported that out to my shared location, when I save that tool chest in there, and I have it locked, it'll be locked for everyone. So this is what that is indicating. So as long as you've got that file where it's supposed to be, exporting it will remove it from your program or copy it from your program and place it somewhere else in the computer. So if we go through and put it, on our SharePoint in content tool chests, it'll copy it from here and put it in there, and it won't be locked. You have to actually do the export, place that file in the correct location. So let's say in here, and click save. And then you'll want to actually remove this tool chest and load it into your own program again, the same as how other people will be accessing it. Because at the moment it's created a copy. So for me, I need to just get rid of that bottom one, or the one we just made, sorry, the switchboard one. I need to import from where I saved it to. So if I find it again where I got it from in my correct spot, what is it? Switchboard symbols. So I'm loading that one into my program now. You can see it's at the bottom. It's not doesn't have the path individual to me anymore. It has the file name. So that's got that new switchboard symbols at the bottom. That's how I sort of get what I want out of it. If I try and do anything to it, it's not going to lock it the same way it does when it's an individually saved file. But yeah, within the SharePoint permissions, if it's uneditable to other people, that's how you sort of do that piece. But yeah, again, it's a bit of a SharePoint thing. Sorry, I can find an article on it somewhere because there are better instructions out there. It's not something I've had to do myself because, you know, we're more about Bluebeam here than other stuff, and I hate SharePoint. I don't like it at all. It gives me so much trouble. I use it every day and I don't like it. Yeah. Sorry, hopefully that gave you at least a start point for that question. It's definitely a good best practice sort of thing to do. Saving stuff that if multiple people in the office are using your tool chests, you want to put them in somewhere that everyone can get them. But yeah, that's covers off all the questions anyway. So unless there's anything else, or I can clarify anything, I'll stick around. But other than that, that's all I've got. So I'll stick around for more questions if there's anything. Other than that, feel free to take off and get back on with your work days, everyone. Enjoy. Any questions? So Dave introduced himself at the beginning, but his address is there if you want to reach out to him specifically. There's also the generic address for info@cloud82k if you want to use that one. But anything regarding licensing, or if you want to get some specific training for you guys, your company specifically, you can do any of that sort of stuff. So that's the best point of contact for that. Awesome. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you around if there's anything else. If you go through any of these emails, it'll eventually get to me. So if there's any other questions, chuck them through there. It'll get to me one day eventually.